All right, welcome everyone. Hope everyone can hear me well. Good to see you. We got some people joining from all over. I think I saw mostly New York, but I saw Taiwan. Welcome, Long Island, Indiana, Georgia. I know our speaker will be excited about Taiwan. Someone PM'd me and told me they were joining from planet Earth. So welcome. And quick housekeeping, check your name on the Zoom. If you're apparently, if a friend shared the link with you, you're going to show up as your friend's name. I think we have a Grace Cho who has many friends. But welcome again, everyone. Good evening. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We're New York Word Church. We're a small church in Astoria, Queens, which is a neighborhood of New York City. And this is kind of the first time we're doing something like this, a little bit of a larger scale online event. So we're very excited. We're very excited to have everyone. And this is the first of a 4-week series, Convergence, Life and Faith. Right. And basically what we're trying to explore here is, you know, as believers in Christ, and even as non-believers, you know, we have kind of our physical life, right? Our school, our work, you know, our family, our, you know, various personal commitments, friends, various things that we have to do to live our everyday life. And on the other side, we have, you know, the spiritual things. We have everything that Jesus told us to do, you know, love your neighbor, pray, you know, attend church, all these different things, you know, evangelize, right? And sometimes these two can be contrasting. And one of our big questions may be, you know, how do we take these two different lives that we're supposed to live and actually bring them together, right? And create that bridge. And I think you'll see through the 4 speakers over the course of this event that, you know, these are people who, you know, have some experience doing that. They have some success in their physical life, but at the same time, you know, they use that and they use that as a platform, right? And they are used by God in various ways through the success and the various physical things that they're involved with. So our first speaker, just to give him a bit of an introduction, and I know he'll introduce himself a bit as well. But our first speaker is Leo Lin, who hails from Taiwan. And just to share a bit of his story, he started, you know, he'll tell you he started in a very, very humble background, humble family. But he was able to move to the United States a couple of years ago. He's currently enrolled in an MBA program, that's Master's Business Administration, at the University of Michigan. So we have a Wolverine amongst us. And he has some consulting experience in the past. And, you know, when I look at his resume, it's, I will admit, it's quite impressive. He's done some work with KPMG, Deloitte, who are 2 of the what's considered like the big 4 accounting firms, big international accounting firms. He recently started work with a nonprofit NGO that's affiliated with the United Nations, and they're involved with tackling climate change. So, you know, no small task there. And he also, you know, he recently accepted a position with McKinsey Consultants. And if you're not familiar with McKinsey, I mean, they're kind of, you know, known to be like the premier consulting firm. Many Fortune 500 companies use McKinsey as a consultant. And also, when I looked up, you know, former McKinsey consultants, you know, and where they're at now, it's a list of, you know, CEO of this company, CFO of such and such company, COO of this other company. So Leo, we certainly have big expectations for you, my friend. My favorite on the list was the founder of Doordash, was a former McKinsey consultant. I would have many hungry nights if it wasn't for him. But before I turn it over to Leo, I just want to point out we're going to send out a question and answer form. So Grace, you can send that out now, I think. And so at any point throughout the presentation, if you have any questions for Leo, feel free to pop open that document, submit your question, and then at the end, we'll, if we have time, we'll go through a few questions for Leo. But with that, without further ado, Leo, I will turn it over to you, sir. The stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much, Darren. So let me share my screen. Everyone can see what we have here. I believe so. Cool. So yeah, thank you so much. I think today we know the topic is really long because, you know, a little bit lengthy topic can actually attract you. But this topic, just put it really simple, it's just about the life efficiency. How to really live your life in a really efficient way. I think that's so many people really curious about. And I do find from my personal life, if I follow specific thing, what I learned in the Christianity, that really support me to make me live a really efficient life. So that's why I have a chance, and I really inspired to have this. Hope that I can really share something valuable with everyone here. So thank you so much. And so very first thing is just my introduction, but this one is not really like I want to go through detail for you. This one is actually Darren already covered a little bit, and I want to show this one compare with the next one for you. But this one I would just want to let you know, like I'm consulting, all this background, I get into the university with some special offer. And also my dream, the most important thing is my dream. The very last line is that I want to empower people in need. That's what I really want to do. But this is what happened. I mean, 29 is my current age. I'm 29 years old now, but look at this. I mean, 10 years ago, this is my status. So you look at this. I mean, 10 years ago, I born and raised in a very poor family in Taiwan. Where I live, I only have 3 buses pass every single day. So other than that, I would just have no way to really get out of my town because only three buses pass away. And I also diagnosed as the ADHD. So I'm an ADHD patient. If you know, you have that kind of friend when you growing up, I believe you saw they are all bullied by your classmates, or maybe so many people don't like them, and that's probably also my case. And I also have some defects in my physical body, and in my freshman year, I only have a $100 to purchase food, and frequently when really hungry in the capital city, that's what I experienced. And at that moment, I then, 18 years old is actually, I just kickstart my freshman year, my college life. But I didn't like my major. I want to transfer either to different major or different college. But actually, I just, struggle there, didn't really change too much. And my goal there was just simply to get out of the starvation. So I would just make sure I don't die from lack of food. That's what I'm thinking. So it's actually what exactly I was before I really learned about this. And this is roughly a time I kickstart my life in Christianity. I'm not second generation of Christians. I'm the first generation. My parents are all just some paganism. I mean, they just worship some idols, and in Taiwan, because that's a really common religion, everyone go with that way. So that's what I actually experienced. So how to really live that efficiently, I want to introduce a model which I figure out really fit in what I learned in the church. It's about golden cycle. But why I make it as a title, your lifelong assignment, that's because this is a golden cycle for everyone. You can have this golden cycle to fill in your why, your how, and your what. And that's all thing you have to fill up. after this section or after a couple of days after this section, you have some thoughts about this, you try to write down something that will be really helpful. So this is just assignment that I show everyone, so we know what's our goal. If you can figure out what you can fill in here after this section, I believe you really get something good from here. If you can, no worry, take some days and move on by learning more things about the Christianity, learn about, we also have a Bible study here. You can jump in to learn about different Bible study, learn from there, move on. That's also a really good start. So how to really make that happen? Actually, from my consulting background, from my personal experience, this is not a model for McKinsey. Today is just really, I do it on behalf of myself. It's not on behalf of McKinsey, but today I just want to show you like what I really figure out that I can really make it happen. So there are 3 different actions we can do. The very first thing is to understand others. Understand others, that means you recognize others' points of view and accept that is different from yours. And that really links to the what, which is in the whole circle. Remember, that's a very outer circle. And it's about that what you actually do. You know, it's actually the very start of your change. So, I mean, think about that today. When I just kickstart my consulting life, usually the major job we have to do work on is to make a PowerPoint, make a deck, which you saw here. And whenever my boss would tell me like, oh, you should fix A, you should fix B, you should make it more concise, you should make it more aesthetic. But it's not really like, that's a little bit like what your boss asks you to do, you know, like change that pyramid, maybe make it more distorted a little bit, or move it right a little bit more, or left a little bit more. It's a bit like what? But think about this, if you cannot, I mean, I work in Hong Kong before I came here. So, I mean, my boss also spoke English and you couldn't understand that. And you actually cannot change your behavior, right? You cannot change your deck. You cannot change what you present to your clients because you just didn't understand. And even she speak English, she speak Mandarin to me. I just couldn't understand that what she actually meant. So I couldn't really move on from there to change my deck. Probably he just said, Leo, make your slide more concise. What does that really mean? I think concise like, oh, I put I delete more words. But actually that may not be her idea. She probably meant something else. So it's just the different. So at very first start, you have to understand others so you can start to change your behavior. And the same example, I mean, when I back in KPMG serve as the consulting, and actually my role there is also promoted to be the executive assistant to the board member. And the board member is a really legend in my firm, to be honest with you. In KPMG, we are famous for some financial service industry. Our financial service institution as our clients. So for example, like we have the largest bank in Taiwan, we have a largest American bank join KPMG to be one of our clients. But here is the issue. In our firm, we just really have no one can really beat and win the project from them. Everything except my boss. My boss is the first one to introduce all these clients to me, to KPMG. And so for me, he is just like a best role model for me. So I learn and closely think about each idea from him. I try to understand what it actually meant for each part of like my deck, like our proposal, like what's the service we should offer to our clients. So I think deeply and take it as my exemplar, as my role model, and move on with him and learn from him. And when I reach this level, actually, I feel my consulting skill actually improves significantly, just because I start to understand something. I start to do something outside of my learning. Probably that whenever I make a deck, he would tell me that you should be concise, what you should do. But whenever I did it on my own, I know why he wants this to be presented in a specific way, even though he didn't say something. My first version, first draft of my deck can be really fitting his expectation, because I know what he exactly wants. I know his reason, and I even know whenever he approaches each client, he wants to serve the clients and offer the best service to the clients. He is a really altruistic person. So he just wants to make sure he is not just making money, he is also helping customers. So that's the way, the mentality he has. So if you really follow a good role model, exemplar, you can start to change the way you think. And that's how we drive the second circle, which is how. But it's not enough. If you can move on deeper to this one I will talk about more detail in the next slide, but not here. But if you follow exemplar, and that exemplar even further inspire you, and you can move on to why, which is the core of the golden circle. When you drive the core of golden circle, you can make everything, nearly everything possible. Think about Apple. Golden circle is really famous when people introduce the Apple products, because Apple products saying like, today we are not really making the product to earn the money from you, which is what, right? They're saying that, how about we make a laptop which can change humans' life? And they start move on to how to change a human's life. What's the problem we have with the current laptop, especially from the Microsoft? They're just thinking about that. And they move on to thinking about, okay, so what should we do? And another opposite example is from Light Brother. Light Brother, everyone knows that, they innovated the airplane. But do you know one thing? At the same time, in London, there's another team, they were making the airplane at the same time. They tried to innovate one, but they failed. They got all the government sponsor them from UK, from France, and they also have everyone believe they could do that. And their teammates all just PhD from the Oxford, like Cambridge, the best university in the world. But the funny thing is that they never made it, because they're just thinking about the thing they're thinking about is just what, because they're thinking about what we want to do, we just make an airplane, make sure it can fly. But Light Brother is thinking about what would happen if human can fly. They try to they start from the motivation, they don't start from their technique. So even though they are just two engineers of bicycle, but they can make airplane. That's really incredible, isn't it? So we just move on one by one. So very first part about what. So actually this part, how we can read deeper more from Bible. So here we have 3 things we can look into. Remember, our topic is about Peter. So we have 3 scripts about Peter. It's a story between Peter and Jesus. When Jesus first time met Peter around the beach, and Jesus actually was going to preaching the word, and he just borrowed a sheep from Peter. And the very first part in the Luke chapter 5:3, he got into one of the boats. This is Jesus, and the one belonging to Simon, which is Peter, right? And asked him to put out a little from shore. Then he sat down and told the people from the boat. But here, remember, our character is Peter. So why this one I move on to the conclusion to be accommodating? Think about this. When you are going to change yourself, do you open your mind, or do you open your mind to accept someone to step into what you are doing? For example, when I'm doing my deck, if I don't let my boss to step in or my teammates step in to look into my deck, and I was just thinking that I can do a good job, you don't need to look into that, I'm not being accommodating. I'm not really thinking about maybe he wants to see something, or maybe he is not really coming to review my deck. Maybe my teammate just saying that, oh, I'm making my own deck. Would you let me take a look on your deck, and maybe I can have some inspiration from there? If I say no, I don't want to help him, probably I just have nothing. So it's all from driving from the goodwill. If you can drive everything from the goodwill, you can have a thing different. So that's what I mean. The very first step Peter did in this story is to be accommodating. He accommodated to Jesus, even though he didn't know who Jesus was, right? And the second script about Luke, also chapter 5, 4-5. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into deep water and let down the net for a catch." Simon answered, "Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything, but because you say so, I will let down the net." To be honest with you, if he really believed Jesus, he probably may not have the first sentence say, we didn't work out anything, but just because you say something, if you really believe that, you wouldn't say that. You would just say, "Oh yeah, go ahead." But again, I mean, you can tell one thing. First of all, he is kind of complaining and he was really worried about whatever. But anyway, he still be bold. He still not really trust, but he just tried to be bold to accept this proposal to, okay, I just try it. I mean, just like this. I mean, when I make a deck, maybe my teammates say, "Oh, I mean, this part, I just couldn't understand. Would you want to change it a little bit in which way? Maybe move the second bucket to the first bucket and rearrange this." If at that moment I'm just thinking about, no, I don't want to do that. I mean, you don't understand. That's my proficiency. That's the part I'm in charge of. Then you just shut up. If I just say that, I mean, you have no chance to move, right? So understanding all is not easy. You have to move one by one. You have to pass the first one, being accommodating. And second, you have to be bold. And third, what actually Peter meant, so he changed his behavior. Let's see. Luke chapter 5 again, 6-8. When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled their partner in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus, kneeled and said, "Go away from me, Lord, I'm a sinful man." So this is really important about what? Yeah, he started to be humble in front of Jesus for sure. But physically, you have to learn from this that when you be bold, when you, for example, in my case, I changed my deck and my deck earned a compliment from my boss. And I should be humble saying that, "Oh, wow, John, you did a good job. Your feedback is really helpful. That really support me and make me, make my deck much more better, much more understandable." That's incredible for me. So, it's moved on from there. So remember in the previous slide, we show you that you have to accept others have different thoughts. You have to accept that. So when you accept that and do this 3 ways, you can start to changing your behavior. So like today, if I did inspire you to do something, would you humble saying like, "Okay, this 29 years old and looks like high school can really teach you something?" That doesn't make sense. I mean, that's what I always receive from most people around me. I think about this, I look like this when I present to the CEO of the banks. And they have to listen there and saying that this guy is saying something wrong, I have to follow. Saying something right, I have to follow. And it's just like, I don't know. I mean, one of my clients talked to me before when I was in KPMG, and he just said, at the very beginning, that's kind of torturing. But after that, I figured out that, yeah, you are really good. But it just like, it was torturing when I just saw you standing there presenting something to me and you look like my kids, like my son. That doesn't make sense. I said, yeah, sure. So, I mean, starting from here, we figure out this about like, this is the way that we can start to understand everyone. So we move on to the next one about how. So how we can really move on to really do the way that I can really have the exemplar. Let's take assumption before we dive into this slide. Let's assume you have found your exemplar. You already found your role model. Okay, so we talk about this. And you will figure out one thing after I finish this slide. Even you already found your role model, that doesn't mean you can really follow him. That doesn't mean you can really, really learn something from him, even though you found it. Let's see. On the left-hand side is Peter's example. Right-hand side is my example. But I go through the Peter's example, and we have an overlapping period, which is that we follow in the Lord. So let's see the Peter story. Peter was a grumbler, right? Remember I shared with you in the Luke chapter 5 and 5. He said that word just kind of changed Jesus that I don't believe so. But I mean, second, he started being humble, which I also covered before when he talked to Jesus that I'm a really sinful man. So it's kind of, he started from here to follow Jesus, but he also being skeptical before. In the Matthew chapter 26, 75. Then Peter remembered the word Jesus had spoken. Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. And he went outside and wept bitterly. It's right before Jesus went to crucifixion. When people asked Peter, is that your teacher? And he said no, for 3 times. For 3 times. So we know that Jesus is Messiah and this in our Christianity system. But think about this. If Peter really knew Jesus was and is Messiah, do you think he would disown him 3 times? It won't, right? It wouldn't, right? So that means actually he was skeptical about Jesus role. And then he moved on. Before his death, he being faithful only to Lord. At the age of 65, Peter bravely faced the crucifixion and even asked for the crucifixions with his head down, which is much more horrible than Jesus' experience. And because he wanted to compensate his doubt to the Lord. So here, what I would like to show you, Jesus is amazing. Peter is really incredible. But I want to tell you is like, when you follow the exemplars or you follow a role model, you have your ups and downs. You have your ups and downs. Being humble is probably his ups because he figured out, oh yeah, I figured out the Messiah. Being skeptical, he disowned 3 times. That's definitely his downs. And remember, before that, he followed Jesus so many times. He believed that Jesus can be Messiah. No one can attack him or whatever. But in the end, it's a reverse way. So you have ups and downs. But how to overcome this? I don't want to take. I take Peter's example as a kind of benchmark to inspire you why I could really overcome my same or similar situation in my life. But I still want to show my example for the case that you would feel like more closer to yourself because, first of all, I mean, humans still speak to you, right? You wouldn't see that Peter speak to you. If you can tell me, that would be amazing. And second, think about this. You saw my previous background, right? 10 years ago, I was just a joke, or I would say that I'm just nearly a trash somewhere in the world. So I'm really ordinary person, or even much horrible than no ordinary person. So you definitely can do much better for me. So that's why I want to share my story to kind of benchmark for you, which you can really convince you can do that as I did when I really benchmarked myself to Peter. 2009, I started my Bible study in my church. And 2010, I surrendered to Christ. So I started to stay in church. In 2013, I discovered my disability and my sickness, which I mentioned before, ADHD. Surprisingly, that was diagnosed when I was going to graduate from my college. And also, the gene defects, which I figured out when I went to the military hospital because we have to do some special. Treatment there. Yeah, so and because of that, I mean, 2016 is actually my downs. Why I mentioned that? Because 2016 is actually that I confront the face trials like Peter experienced before. I remember 2016 is there was a huge event happened to me. My boss, the board member I mentioned, I was his executive assistant, and he was going to retire. And if you know you serve as someone's executive assistant, that literally means you are only under him and you can lure everyone in the office. But when he was going to retire, that's probably the time you have to leave office, or you would experience the really horrible office politics. I believe everyone here could kind of tell what happened. So I have to look around for the next job. It's really, really hard to do that. So but at the very beginning, I just like Peter, I just don't really, when Peter first heard about the slanderers spread some rumor against Jesus, he didn't fall down. He didn't fall down. He just kept doing what he believed. And I did the same thing. I mean, 2016, I would just I mean, I was in Taiwan, so I just went evangelization. I evangelized more people than I did before. I remember 2016, I talked to 100 people, and 80 of them accept the Bible study, and maybe 10 of them actually surrendered to Christ. So that's what actually I did before. But you know what? 2017, I figured out that I improved nothing despite praying and evangelizing more. I pray more, I evangelize more, but nothing happened to me. I still couldn't find a job. I couldn't figure out what I should do next. And my situation actually went worse. And how my situation was just really horrible. But at that moment, I think that I really recall something like Peter, someone in my church. I remember that, when I saw them, they sometimes told me, they told me that I would really take care of the church Christians much more. I would take care of my church member much more. That's one pastor told me. He said he would just cherish this much more. And I was just thinking about, he already did so much. How could he do more? Just like Peter, he already followed Jesus for 3 years without, experience all these rumors, all this frustration, but he still followed. However, you know what? When I look into my pastor, I figure out that, yeah, he didn't really maintain what he helped people as he talked to me at that time, because actually he sacrificed himself much more, just like Peter. He sacrificed himself much more. And in the end, you saw, I mean, he was skeptical to Jesus, but in the end, he stepped into the crucifixion and even did it in a more horrible way, which is with the head down, right? So it's just like that. I did a lot in 2017. I really do a lot. But I shouldn't just say because I did a lot, but I didn't receive anything, I just quit. Because I know when I follow Jesus, when I follow Lord or follow God, I have to trust them and just keep doing that. I have my ups and downs, but I shouldn't really stop. I dedicate a lot. It will end up with the condition like a fertilizer in your soil, which name us your life. You'll be there. And all you need to do is to empty your hearts. So that's what happened when I follow this example and just did what Peter did. So this is roughly the everything. But why I would just want to quickly cover in a really short period. And this one just simply we do a really quick comparison. You see that Peter have those changes I already mentioned. I summarized here, but I only highlighted the pursue change. Remember, he just wanted to feed himself and his family, right? But he started to feed Jesus' sheep when Jesus talked to him saying that, do you love me? And when Peter said, I love you, and Jesus replied that you feed my sheep. I mean, the same. As the previous example I told you, when I realized it's not about how much I dedicate myself to church. It's about that you keep doing that, but you keep trusting God and do what you should do and follow the Lord, follow the words you learn about, and you will start to change. And that shocked me in the sense that I changed even my dream. I started thinking about like, I shouldn't really just feed myself. I should really empower people in need. And when I do that, so many things different, so many things change. And I move on to the different life. So that's actually the whole thing happened. And I can tell you, like, when you start to helping more people, and everything will change. But motivation is toughest, but that really take time. But just remember, keep doing so and keep striving on how to follow your exemplar. One day, the exemplar will inspire you as I was inspired by Peter. So thank you so much. And this is a deck, but don't email me or call me, okay? Because that's actually I put it there to balance my slide. And the phone call is actually the bad breath notification hotline. If you need, you can call that. So, I mean, I really found that's really interesting. It's a bad breath. So if you have that, just make a phone call, notify. That's a hotline. So probably they will pick up your home. So I give the floor back to Darren.
Thank you, Leo. I was calling the number, but I think the main thing I got out of that is that you're now a nearly normal person. I'm a little alarmed. I invited Leo to stay at my apartment next week, but if he's only nearly normal, I might have to reconsider. No, just kidding, of course. Thank you, Leo. That was phenomenal. I think that Peter's story is I enjoy diving into it for so many reasons. I think Peter's probably the disciple that we kind of have the most insight into, the way he think and the things he did, right? And I think there's so much that we can relate to there. And also you mentioned motivation, and I think that's going to be one of my takeaways here is, we have so many things going on in our lives, physical, spiritual, and what's our motivation, right? What's our end goal? And Leo, a tip of the cap to you, sir. I know certainly you're motivated by just your desire to be used by God and to be a platform and to be able to testify for Him. So I appreciate you for doing that. I believe the question and sheet was put in the chat. So I'll give you all a moment to pull that up in the Zoom chat, and you can drop your questions in there, and we'll start going through a little bit of questions for Mr. Lin. All right, Leo, you're on the hot seat, my friend. All right, Leo, first question for you, sir. So you spoke a little bit about recognizing and accepting different points of view, right? Have you ever been in like a professional situation where maybe you were with someone who you disagreed with and it was difficult to work with that person, and kind of what happened there?
Yeah, I did. When I worked in Hong Kong, that my boss, she was just really interesting. I mean, sometimes she just have a really cool opinions or aspect about what we should do. So like this time, I mean, we are running a new service. We are proposing a new consulting service to the market. And back then, I remember she saying that, oh, we should not really approach that because the market is really competitive back then for that service. And we should not approach it because we don't think we have the chance to do that. So when I heard about that, I thought that's just not so right. And I just couldn't understand that. So the first thing I did is I pray. And when I pray, I also talk to the different people in the firm to collect their information, to collect their opinion about this strategy. And some of them actually gradually told me that the reason she didn't want to pursue is just like she want to keep some really conservative way so she can be promoted next year because she already did a good job for this year. So she didn't want to scoop up anything. So after I figured that out, the very first thing is I do is like, I mean, when I talk about understanding other, I didn't say that you always follow other. What I'm saying is like you have to stand in someone's shoes and validate about that idea. So when I do when I try to do that, I mean, office, what's the thing you can validate to? I mean, you have a Bible, you have a choose to validate, right? But in the office, you probably have to figure out something you can validate with. So actually, the thing I did is actually I have a conversation with actually also my boss, but actually was her boss as well. So I just talked to that because our consulting firm have a really open channel for you to talk to anyone. So I just talked to the senior boss and check with him about what exactly I didn't really school her up. I just didn't say that she said that, but what I'm saying is like I just want to figure out that what exactly from your perspective, what's the best thing for the firm. And he said that when we try this, what we actually should really approach this project, because if we don't really approach this market, we will lose much more in the future. So from the perspective of the whole company, for the whole benefits, not for individual, we should actually pursue it. So after I learned about that, the thing I went back is not really fight with her. The thing I start understand everything, I validated with the truths I learned from my boss. And what I'm doing is that actually I collect the data about the market and also collected the resource we would probably have to invest to do this bit. And after I pull out all the data layer and summarize something, and I convince her with the data, with the truth in the office, saying that we should approach that. And we did win that project. We actually in total win the $1 million project. Couple project 2 to 3, around one in total is 1 million to my firm. So I think it's like, yeah, you change your behavior. She actually changed my behavior. If she didn't really told me that, if I didn't really stood in her shoes and check with my boss and just accept what she said, and probably just everything just happened there. But because she said her opinion and she didn't want to change, and I checked with my boss, that also changed my behavior. And after I validated with the truth, and I really make things different. So that's what I think. Yeah, hope that answered your question, but that's what I thought.
Awesome. Thanks, Leo. And thank you to whoever put that question. A couple more here, if we have a few more minutes. Okay, when did you notice the changes in your physical and spiritual situation? Is it something that you knew or something that happened immediately, or did it take a couple of years?
Yeah, I think the physical change is mainly about, I think it's really mainly about my ADHD. I mean, because previously I was just really easily, I just got angry really easily. And sometimes I would make a decision out of thinking about too much. But because God allowed me to stay with my church member, this beautiful and really nice person that you saw in the screen, and they kind of accept my mistake and gradually told me what I should do. And when I work with them for the church task or church job, and they gradually inspire me to do in their shoes, to think about everything. So I start to changing myself to be more flexible and be more considerate to them. So that's a physically change. And spiritual change, to be honest with you, that's super insignificant. It's just really hard to identify that. That's kind of super gradually. I mean, when you get to church, that, I mean, they always told you that, I mean, heaven is really important, hell is really horrible. But for me, I just feel like, oh, it's not my business. So that really took me so many time to figure out that the value of spiritual world, because I thought, I mean, it's not so important. I mean, I think I care more about whether I can live happily. Maybe I don't care if I get money or not, but I really care about whether I have my happiness in my daily life. So to be honest with you, like, I didn't really get that, but gradually I got this more like, when I know that in my church, I remember that because I saw a pastor, he prayed for me a lot. And what he prayed for, he prayed that he really hoped that we, and including me, to understand the value of spirits and to really, really live for the spirits. I mean, I started to change, but it's not like he prayed that, I mean, from for sure before 2010, before I get into church. But the thing really changed me is actually I saw him praying for that from 2010 all the way down to 2015, 2016, 2017. And I gradually figured out one thing. If I didn't really try to understand more about spiritual world or try to value spiritual world more than physical world, whether I was so wrong, because someone prayed so much for me, someone dedicated so much to me, but I didn't really do that. So that started changing me. Like, okay, I start to convince myself I should really cherish spiritual world rather than physical world. And after I start to change my thoughts, I figure out that I start to value the positive and the really incredible parts of the spiritual world. So I think it's all start from whether you want to change your thoughts. So it's actually go back to the golden circle, the why. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Leo. I appreciate that. I think it's encouraging, like you said, it was a very gradual process for you on the spiritual side. I think too often people think, you come to accept Jesus, you start coming to church, and it's like, your life changes like that. But certainly it's a process, and an effort has to be put in, right?
Yeah.
And lots of prayer. That's something that in my conversations with you, you said, like prayer is like your priority, right?
Yeah.
Another question, and you touched on this a little bit, but how has your ADHD affected your faith? And what advice would you give to people in similar situations who want to pursue faith?
Yeah, I think, look, ADHD really affect me in the sense that I couldn't pay attention to everything I'm doing. So if we put it really simple, when I pray, I probably can only pray around 10 seconds to 30 seconds. And it's not just for the single years. Like I think it's more than 5 years. Every time I pray every day, it's just like that short. But you know what? One day when I pray, I start to pray a little bit longer than 30 seconds because I'm thinking about one thing. God really loved me. I mean, back then one day I realized God really loved me. So it's really hard for me to keep praying, but because for someone I love, I want to stay a little bit longer. So it's just like that. I mean, love is endurance, perseverance, right? So when you start to do it, I remember I start to add 5 seconds to my prayer, and gradually now I can pray 30 minutes to 1 hour from 30 seconds. And it's actually just because, because whenever I sit there, I've thought about whether I should keep it a little bit longer. I just think about that, how much God already sacrificed for me. He sent Jesus to the world, and we crucify him, but he still loves us, continue, God called us, and never quit on us. I know some people say Christ died because they didn't reveal it, but I don't think Christ or Jesus really, I don't think Christ really died. I mean, it's actually about the Christ love died. Just not so many people show the love like Jesus to you. You feel like a church died, but not really, not because church really died. Just because we don't have the people show that love to everyone. When in my whole life, I coached one church member. He was not. He was also from the paganism family. But you know what? He actually told me that I really changed his life because he realized someone can love him so much, just like God really loved him. And when he told me that it's in the a ceremony that he do some presentation, and if he wants, he can earn a scholarship from the Rotary. Rotary, right? Is a really good big group. And back then they have a 3 different level of scholarship. If you are the first one, you can get the 20,000, 12,000. And if you are second place, you got 10. And if you are third place, you got 7,000. But you know what? He got 13,000. yeah, you didn't hear me wrong. 30,000 saying that it's above the first price. And the reason is because he told me that Jesus changing him in the rotary, saying that, and he also asked me to attend and talk to everyone that I show that love to him. And he also told everyone his father is actually a drug dealer in the jail. How could this family change? I believe it's only the way Jesus' love came to him. And just because I'm not good, but Jesus really allowed me to show that love to these kids. So he came to church and really accept here. So when I do the ADHD, now I all pray for the thing. I really appreciate God that you gave me this disease. So I can really cherish each minute in my prayer because I couldn't pray so long, but each minute was so incredible for me. It's just like if I'm a deaf, I would be really appreciated if I can hear the message from the words, from the written forms, and that's from God. If I'm deaf, think about this, I'm deaf, I cannot hear. God told me everyone cannot hear that, but I know I can see a message that someone said that's from God. I never hear about any sound in my life, but the first sound I heard about is the God's message. So for me, ADHD is the same thing. Each meaning for me in the prayer is really incredible.
Thanks, Leo. Sorry, I'm trying to wipe away a tear.
Are you serious?
No, I think it goes back to your point, on motivation, right? And it comes down to that one word, love, which I agree. I think if we can realize that, that's a powerful motivation for so many things. All right, one more question. I'll be selfish. This is a question that I had. I've done some work with like large banks in the United States. So my question is, what's the difference? What differences have you seen between like business, culture, et cetera, consulting in the United States versus what you've seen in like Taiwan or Hong Kong?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is a really cool question. I would say that, in Taiwan, in Hong Kong, I would say that let's just think about the spectrum for two different dimensions. First dimension is about that the people work leverage more on relationship. That's one spectrum. And another spectrum is that people leverage more on just the thing itself. It's just about the policy, about the corporate policy, something like that. You just not really have a relationship there. And I would say I would put Taiwan as definitely the end of that relationship. And US is probably and another end, which is about that everything follow the policy. But Hong Kong is kind of between. So, I mean, for Hong Kong people, you can probably work with them with some relationship, but they still really adhere to their policy. You need a really strong relationship with them to change the way that they won't really follow policy, but but really help me in a way that that I can really earn something from him. So that's probably the difference. And the second thing is also, I mean, this first dimension is about this, but second dimension is about like whether you can be treated fairly. And for United States, it's just really like super on the other hand. It's just like they can really treat you fairly because everything just follow the policy. But another end is Hong Kong. They probably wouldn't do that. And Taiwan is actually in the between. Why I say so? Because United States just everything follow policy. So when I live with my classmate, maybe I have a different skin color. I mean, to be fun fact, my skin color is also different from Taiwanese because I'm a little bit mixed with the Dutch. So because our country was colonized by them and we have some implicit genes. So that's why mixed with me. I have a little bit whiter skin and a lighter skin and also have the red hair. My hair is actually red black. It's not really like a black. It's a red black. So it's kind of people wouldn't treat me because of my my color, and they would just really treat me because I did a really good job. But when I back in Hong Kong, also I experienced the whole protest. If you know that, they have a strike, they have protest, and every day when I finish my work, I just look down the window and just all fog because those are tear gas. Yeah, that's what I experienced. So back then, because they just really want to keep the Hong Kong people there, so they only promote Hong Kong people for that 2 years. And I worked for 3 years. I mean, think about this, worked 3 years in KPMG, I promoted to be an executive assistant, and my salary is the highest, and I can control everyone except for the board member. But back to Hong Kong, I worked for 3 years, earned $1 million for my firm, and I got no promotion. And you can tell what happened there. It's just because I cannot speak Cantonese. I just not right. I'm not really from Hong Kong, but it's just a kind of really cool way in that sense. But I didn't say they are wrong. I mean, just like what I experienced, but that's kind of the mix there. So it's not bad or wrong. I mean, I told you that just 2 different dimensions. You can pick out which one you prefer, and different people have a different preference. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I think there's a lot of, a lot of insight there and just how to deal with people from different cultures. That's cool. Thank you, Leo, for sharing.
Yeah.
All right. I think that brings us to the end. Leo, I thank you, sir.
Someone raised a hand, right?
Before we let you all go, I just wanted to say that we're going to have a survey. Grace, if you could drop that in the chat. And the survey has a couple questions, and we would appreciate, like I said, this is our very first time doing something like this. It's our first week of the series. So any insight, any suggestions, you liked it, you loved it, you didn't like it, anything that we can do to improve, we would greatly appreciate that. And then also, and Leo kind of alluded to it, if you want to connect with us more, right? We actually have a lot of different Bible studies we do, usually smaller groups or even one-on-one Bible studies where we can, dive into these topics a little bit more. Leo touched on, the spirit, the spiritual world, these different things, prayer, whole bunch of different things that we could dive into further if you're interested. So please do fill out the survey. Anonymously if you'd like, but we'd love to be able to connect with you. So put your name in there if you can. And then also just a plug for next week, we'll be back here, same time, same place. We have Dr. Emily Atkinson presenting. Without giving too much away, she has worked in hospitals for the duration of COVID, and she's going to share a little bit about her experiences during that time. So feel free to, invite your friends, and looking forward to seeing everyone again then. Other than that, give a golf clap for Leo. Thanks again, sir, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you all.
Thank you, Leo. He's already gone.